Mr. Fadipe, you've heard from Nigerians, firsthand. And last time we had you here, you also had your own, take on what is happening in the power sector. So would you blame Nigerians for, not wanting to pay, considering they say that they can't pay for something that they do not even enjoy? And we saw the drama that happened, I think, last month, where the discos called out a large number of people and houses and zones for not paying up electricity bill. Would you blame Nigerians?
I would rather commend them for even not being eruptive. Because the truth of the matter is the power situation is becoming really, really embarrassing, to say the least. I mean, we've been telling this story for 10 years plus after privatization. I mean, let's even commend Trust TV for bringing us that picture from Owerri. Mm-hmm. If you go to Wuse Market here, there are at times you can't pass through some places because of noise of generating sets. You can't find less than 20 particularly, maybe Madam will know, you may not know as a man. Mm-hmm. If you go to that area where they make air in Wuse Market, just as you enter the market, I really don't know how to describe it, but there's a portion of the market where a lot of women do air. The noise from that area, on the day that there is no power supply, you will need to cover your ears in order not to blow your drums. So if what Nigerians are just saying that, look, we are disgusted, we are not paying, I think we should commend them for being that patient. Because for 10 years or even more, what brought about privatization? Was it not because of alleged inefficiency with the then NEPA, which metamorphosed into PACN, and then we went into privatization during the Jonathan period, and then before we got to. So I think Nigerians should be commended, because if electricity had been as good as we want it to be, there will be no pressure on gas, there will be no pressure on petrol. Because, for instance, I, as a legal practitioner, about sometime in the middle of January or towards the end of January, I needed to rush a process into court because I got the brief towards the end of the day. I had to go and buy petrol of about 15,000. The gentleman said he spent 22,000 for a day. I bought petrol of about 15,000 just to run my gen for some time to be able to prepare the papers I was going to take into court the following morning. 15,000. And that was not all. It was not as if power supply was restored the following day. I still continued with that power supply, so I was on gen for about 3-4 days. Where's the money coming from? And when you tell your clients, sorry, we are going in this direction, when you tell your client, this is the experience I am having, it's a different ballgame entirely. But the point I'm trying to stress here is, I think we should commend Nigerians. I mean, based on your question, we should commend Nigerians for their patience, for their resilience, for their willingness to cooperate with government at all times. But the question is, for how long are we going to be on this trajectory?
And what about those who just want answers, who want an explanation as to why this is the current state of affairs? How would you, as an industry...
Now, what government has been putting out all of the time is, at least in recent times, they started with, the Honorable Minister of Power started with the issue of gas. Oh, we are owing the gas people, there's legacy debt. 1.3 trillion. 3 reasons have been given. 1, the issue of subsidy, that we cannot afford subsidy. 2, the issue of gas, that the gas providers or the gas sellers are not providing the generating companies with gas. Because usually during the dry season like this, the water level for the hydro stations go down. So the hydro stations are not at optimal performance level. They are it's almost like the turnaround maintenance period for them, if it coincides with the turnaround period maintenance, because water level goes down. So we rely on the gas supply. Unfortunately, the gas suppliers are also saying that, look, you are owing us so much, and it's understandable, for God's sake. Which business can you owe $1.3 trillion, not naira, $1.3 trillion, and you expect them to continue to service you? It's not done anywhere. And then government says we have paid $120 million out of $1.3 trillion. I mean, does it make any business sense? How do you want them? So they said, we can no longer continue with this issue of owing us and want us to continue to supply gas all the time. So, of course, they had to withdraw their service to that extent. And the moment they withdraw their service, because gas is the petrol, gas is the fuel with which you fire those stations.
What do you say to Nigerians who say that we have no business buying gas because we do have the gas? I mean, it's a fact that, you know, we have more gas than we do have crude oil, for instance, or petrol, for instance, if we want to. Do you think, looking at the industry right now, especially when it comes to generating part, where most of our plants are powered by gas, for instance, because the hydro is still something that is still lurking in the shadows, do you have any reasonable understanding of why, you know, a country that is heavily blessed with gas is still trying to pay for gas to power our plants?
What their mindset suggests to me is that they also don't have a full understanding, or perhaps they hold the view that you can just go. Gas is, even with water, you know, I think it was, I can't remember who sang the song, water everywhere but none to drink. You can't just go to the river and put your cup inside the river, take a cup of water to drink, because there are impurities, so you need to process water. The same thing with us. We can't just go to where the gas is and just put a bucket there and take it and go to the power station. You still have to process the gas. The machines with which you process the gas are not manufactured in this country. We are an import-dependent country. So what I'm saying in effect is that even before you get the gas, you have to process it. And the machines for processing the gas, you bring them into the country. And you don't buy them with Naira. You buy them in Forex. Unfortunately, the Forex and the Naira today, they are somewhere else. So to that extent, you cannot expect that the gas will just be available for use. Yes, we have been flaring the gas. God has blessed us enormously with this natural resource. But we also don't have the technology to extract. We don't have look at when we discovered oil in this country in the 50s. We have been flaring gas since then. Government policy, we've had government policy saying that all companies involved in the oil or energy sector, they must have a way of making sure that we get the gas. But what is the functionality of those policies today? The fact that we are still where we are suggests to me that those policies are not working. That's number one. Number two, even the gas companies themselves, we prefer to sell the gas to the international market because it's more profitable to them than to sell in the local market. So those economic issues are also affecting us as a nation, especially because we are an import-dependent country. Look at when Ukraine and the Ukraine-Russia war started. It affected us as well. When we were supposed to benefit from it, we didn't benefit from it.
It's really a sad situation.
Very, very sad.
So, Mr. Fadipe, what do you think, needs to be done? Because at this point, I would say that the tolerance of Nigeria, the perseverance of them has been stretched to the latter, where we have seen how this thing keeps degenerating. From last year, Nigerians would say it was a bit better than today,
yes,
as it is now. The constant, taking the power away and then bringing it back, and it's in this period of heat wave, it's affecting everything. Now people have to spend tons of money to do other things in order to get power to run their businesses and even households. So what do you think the government needs to do?
I think enough of rhetorics. First and foremost, I think enough of rhetorics. I think government needs to be courageous. I was listening to, as I drove into your station this morning, I was listening to a program, and I had this voice note or soundbite now where the minister was saying, for 20 years we've been trying to install an equipment in this country, and it's called SCADA. The SCADA is an equipment that helps you to see the entire network all over the country, so that you can plan your load management and all of those things. And for 20 years we have not been able to deliver on that project. That's number one. Minister also said in that program that I had that currently government is thinking of a super grid. and that a super grid is not something you just pick off the shelf. It will take some years. So I ask, how many years will it take? When are we going to have respite in the sector? Because when you say it will take some number of years, let's do a rough calculation. The first 2 years of any administration is the most profitable period of their lifespan in any of their, as they are in government. By the time they are getting into the third year, they are already thinking politics. Not to talk of the fourth year. The fourth year is almost no governance at all. So, and this administration is already in about the 8th month, if am I right? May to
9 months.
About the 9th month. In another 3 months, we are 1 year. So we are going into, and the minister has said it's not what will be done in 6 months. It's not what will be done in 1 year. Meaning that this instability will go beyond this next year that we are talking about. So when are we going to have respite in the power sector? And we've been having administration after administration. During the Buhari period, we had 90 system collapse. 90. So when are we going to have respite in the power sector, for God's sake? Unless government is willing to take the bull by the horn and say, look, gentlemen, enough is truly enough. What exactly is going on? The other day, some people went to what's this line now? Bringing Kebbi. They burnt 2 transformers there. And then the 330, which of the lines now? I can't remember precisely, but it's a 330 kV line that also feeds Niger Republic. And they sabotaged the lines. And government said, we are investigating. For how long are they going to investigate? When are they going to bring those who are culpable to trial? When are we going to begin to get people to understand that, look, Americans do not own this country. Nigerians own this country. It's not Nigerians that own this country. It's not the Britons that own this country. We, the people of this country, own this country unless we deal with the issues frontally, irrespective of where you come from. We will not get out of this mess.
Would you say the current actions with the minister or someone in AEDC executive
that's just a slap on the wrist?
Is this posturing, or is this a commitment that we're attacking the proverbial bull by the horn? For me,
how many times we have seen summons now and again, What has it achieved? Because again, the discourse, they have their problems. We cannot run away from that fact. I'll tell the discourse to give you an inventory of their investment in the power sector today. How many injection substations have they built in the last? Let's even not go to the last 10 years. In the last 5 years, how many injection substations have they built? How many transformers have they bought? Let them give us inventory of what they have invested in the network for the money.
You're basically describing the discourse as parasites.
Whatever name you want to call them, whichever way you want to describe them. But the point I'm trying to make is that even at that, you cannot heap all the blames on the discourse. If generation is not there, because that is the main source. If generation is not there, what will the discourse give? About yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw that AEDC was said to have been given 480 megawatts. How did AEDC spend the 480 megawatts? To who and who did they give the 480 megawatts to? Ordinarily, from my own knowledge of what AEDC can use, AEDC should be aiming to about 1,000. If they have 1,000 megawatts, it won't be too much if people are willing to pay. Because again, willingness to pay is another issue. Maybe, yes, you want to excuse Nigerians and say, some people think that the electricity is my own share of the national cake, therefore I should not pay. But it doesn't make sense. But even at that, do they have the power to give out? So there are so many things that are happening, but I think the fundamental thing is, what is our mindset about this country? What is our mindset about the power sector, whether at governance level or at the level of the followers? What is our mindset? What are we ready to do? You may be willing to pay for electricity. He may be willing to pay for electricity. I may be willing to pay for electricity. Or better still, I may not be willing to pay for electricity. I may just want to jump into the network and take electricity. But should it continue like that, for God's sake? Should Should it continue? And these same Nigerians, they go outside this country and they pay.
Exactly. And you know, systemically speaking, where do we start troubleshooting it? Because right now, there's so many issues, as you've pointed out.
Yes.
From generation, transmission, distribution,
Exactly.
the mindset itself, power theft, and all of these things. And then a lack of transparency, even within the sector itself.
Yes.
As you talked about the contributions or lack of the discourse. Where does the Tinubu administration, because at the heart of the economy also lies this major challenge where businesses are unable to stay afloat because it's not just sustainable. We're talking about rising cost of production. We're talking about inflation right now. This is also playing right into that, because if companies have to manufacture on generators, Nigerians can be rest assured that their goods are not going to be as affordable as they would want it to be. So where do they start troubleshooting this problem, and how do they get it right? Learning from the lessons and the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, it's going to be a multifaceted thing. Ministry of Information must be ready to do its own work. Ministry of Information, National Orientation Agency, that deals with the mindset issue. The legal aspect of it, the law must be ready to take its course. If my brother goes against the law, let it not be that because I have the opportunity to influence it in the background, I'll go. Let him suffer for it. If you can do the crime, you do the time. I mean, every is a a country is a system that is interwoven at one level or the other. Once there is a disjoint, everything will. I mean, it's like, you know, when you ride a bicycle, every of the spoke is connected one way or the other. Let one of them be removed, one or two of them be removed, you are not going to enjoy the riding of the bicycle again. That's exactly the way a country works. It's a system. So if the moral part of it is not good, every other part of it will be affected. Those who are going to vandalize the lines, sorry, arrest them, try them, look for their sponsors, jail them. That's the way society works. Once you are able to manage that aspect of it, then you can come to the side of those who are not willing to pay for electricity. You also deal with them. But you yourself as government must also ensure that the economy is working. So that when they do their little business, they can make money and they can pay for the services that they are getting. It's a system thing. We are in this problem today because our system is already disorientated. That's why one of the fundamental reasons why we are in this problem today. Look at it, for instance. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think the military came out and said, we will shoot at sight. You will see that security has improved maybe marginally. Because I observed that from the time that the military made that comment that we will shoot at sight, since then there has been some calm. Before then, it was really, really turbulent. That was when they were talking about a lot of kidnapping even within the Federal Capital Territory. Things were getting so bad at that point in time. So government needs to rise up to the situation. We have donated our power. We are donors of power we are donors of our rights to government. Let government use that power that we have donated to them.
So beyond the government's efforts, Mr. Fadipe, what about the private sector? Is there any, kind of way to hold them accountable, to bring them up front and them do their own part in order to curtail the situation?
Part of the equity of government has been given to the private sector. And I want to understand your question to mean that what is the private sector doing about the power sector? Now, part of the equity of government has been given to the private sector. 60% of it has been given to the private sector. 40% of it is still with government. Now, the question is, what has the private sector done with the 60% that has been given to it? For me, and that's where the regulatory agency comes in. The regulatory agency is a quasi-audit structure that is supposed to look at what the discos are doing and then take steps. And I'm happy that they took steps with one of the discos recently, where they stepped into the management, removed the board, removed the MD, and appointed a sole administrator, appointed a new board for them, and then gave them time that, look, certain things must happen within certain time, and then they sell back to the public again. So if there is any of the disco, any of the market participants, the GENCOs, incidentally, and I can say this with all air of confidence and excitement, that GENCOs are doing well. GENCOs are doing well. Where we have the fundamental problem, if GENCOs are not able to generate, is because there is lack of respect for contract. And what do I mean? If you are owing the Gencos, they will not be able to purchase gas. So that is not as a result of their own manifest inefficiency, as you see with the discos. There's what is called day ahead nomination with the discos. DAN, day ahead nomination. What is that day ahead nomination supposed to do? By that day ahead nomination, discos ask for the amount of power that they want to get and distribute the following day. Just about 2 or 3 days ago, minister was accusing the discos of rejecting load. That in spite of the improvement by transmission to push load to them, because it's a tripartite, it's a three-legged arrangement: the generator, the transmission or the wheeler, and the discos. So if transmission can take load, assuming for the purpose of this discussion that transmission can take up to 8,000 megawatts, can discos take up to 8,000 megawatts? Can they? Up to this morning, we have not invoiced distribution load up to 4,000 megawatts in this country in the last 10 years. We have not, discos have not been given invoice. Say, okay, we gave you load of 4,000 megawatts, pay for it. No.
So it boils back to, you know, the discourse having this main issue, because if you recall, you know, last month, like I pointed out earlier, that they pointed out some entities that do not pay for electricity. So could it be another factor that is also affecting, you know, their management system?
That's why I said yes, government has a responsibility. I mean, I was embarrassed when was it last week or 2 weeks ago, AEDC came out with a sheet showing those who are owing. And then Minister of Power is owing.
Not surprising, but embarrassing. Yeah.
Honestly, Nigeria is a theater of the absurd.
I remember when they say ASO, so people were saying, no, it's not the president.
And then, you know, and then we saw that the villa was also on the list. And then the villa, then Mr. President approved, and then there was a statement issued to say that President has approved. And I said, excuse me, the President has more serious things to do than to say President has approved the payment of electricity bill for the villa.
Right.
For God's sake, the President has more serious things to do. The person issuing the statement has better things to do with his time than to come and tell us that, as if that's one major achievement.
Right.
I mean, I can't understand.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing to say the least. But also, this past week we have had some sort of good news, especially at the sub-national level. Abia was in the news for all the right reasons. Talk about the geometric power plant. 9 out of its 17 local governments have access to 181 or thereabout megawatts.
Yes.
And it's quite, you know, commendable, because we saw Abians, you know, celebrate on social media saying, you know, 24-hour power supply, and that is quite unprecedented. Talk to us about where the subnationals come in and where initiatives like this could be the panacea to this decade, you know, long challenge that we're struggling to deal with.
I think we must commend Professor Barton. I don't want to go into the politics of, politics surrounding geometric power project, but we must commend him for his tenacity. Because he's been trying to get this
20 yeat in the making.
Exactly, he's been trying to get this off the ground, and luckily he has been able to pull it. 181 megawatts is at least for the purpose of current conversation is huge. So if we have other people who can do that kind of thing, and this is the beauty of the current Electricity Act, which allows private investors, subnationals, like you said, to come into the system and become players. As a matter of fact, it's not just at the generation stage alone that they can become players. They can also be in the transmission, and they can also be in the distribution. I know that Enugu State, for instance, has even gone to the point of appointing their own regulatory commissioners, as you have it at the national level, because the law, the provision in the Electricity Act is that before you get into the market, you must enact your own law. And I know that Oyo, Plateau, Edo, Lagos, Enugu, maybe some couple of other states have been able to enact their own law. At least they have the policy instruments to drive that process. So we must commend Professor Batinaji and Geometric Power for achieving that project. But my concern, my essential concern, is the fact that I hope Nigeria will not happen in a manner of speaking. I mean, this is a street lingo now. I hope Nigeria will not happen to geometric power, by which I mean that we start with a lot of fanfare. We see a lot of energy being pumped into it. And then somewhere along the line, some few years down the road, we begin to have excuses here and there, government policy, government laws, and things like that. So let's hope and pray that geometric power will grow geometrically and perhaps exponentially, so that at the end of the day, it can become a model for other parts of the country. Quite frankly, we look forward to that project going beyond 181 megawatts, because Abia is strategic, is a business hub for the East. So, and I know that if they can expand to 500 megawatts, 800 megawatts, getting up to 1,000 megawatts, and they can sustain availability, affordability will not be an issue. Because people also talk about the issue of affordability. One thing I know very clearly is that if you make the power available to Nigerians, as it is currently, they will still want to pay for electricity generated from public source than their own generator at the back of their homes. It's a lot cheaper. The noise is not there. You don't have to start looking for where there is petrol all the time. Just pinch your wall, and when you do a comparative analysis of the cost, the total cost, you still find public supply far cheaper, more reliable, of a higher quality than the one that your generator is giving to you. So let's hope and pray that Professor Batinaji will be the reference point for private investment in the power sector.
And with regards to what you said about some of the states positioning themselves to explore the opportunities because of the Electricity Act, do you think that the commitment is there? And what do they need to do to tap into this new opportunity? Because clearly this, the national grid itself is leaving much to be desired.
Exactly. Now, I will understand your question to mean that do they have the political will? I think that's a major issue. As tenuous as it may seem like, as insignificant as it may seem like, once the state governments do not feel obligated to do that kind of thing, that okay, look, there are too many problems associated with it, then nobody will pursue it. But I tell you, it's a major exit point from our instability in the sector. I mean, take for instance, let's even say a state government may not have the financial muscle to go through it, and they do it on geopolitical basis, North Central, Northeast, Northwest, coming together. Say, okay, the whole of the states in the North Central, or the whole of the states in the Northeast, or the whole of the states in the Northwest. So, okay, let's aggregate our resources together and then have a regional power system. You would have taken pressure off the grid. One of the things that will make this administration succeed is that there is power to drive foreign direct investment. Because when there is no power, the companies will find it very difficult to budget for extra source of power or alternative source of power. But once there is power, it will crash their production cost, and they will be encouraged to come into the country. So take the North Central, for instance, Kogi, Nasarawa, FCT, and all of those states around. And we say, okay, where is the land? Can we get land somewhere? Put a major power station there, and then run your transmission lines, or work with the current transmission structure that we have. And look at Nasarawa, for instance. Towards the dying days of the Buhari administration, a 330 kV project was commissioned. That's a major one that can radiate around the entire North Central. And from there, you can push out power in that manner that there can be stability. But because all of us are dependent on the existing generating structure, we are not able to get up to 5,000 megawatts into the grid. So imagine that you cut off the entire North Central. You have your own ring system within the North Central, and you have say Plateau has a generating station, Kogi has a generating station, and you're able to push about 500 megawatts. Geregu is there. Say Geregu is serving Kogi State alone. And then Nasarawa has its own. And maybe which other state is nearby again? Okay, maybe FCT. For the purpose of this discussion, seen as a state, and it has its own power station, and it's pushing out 500 megawatts. Kogi cannot take more than 500 megawatts, to the best of my knowledge. Nasarawa maybe about 600 megawatts. FCT maybe about 800 megawatts, being the capital of the country, and everybody wants to be here. And then you push in that about 2,100 megawatts into the grid. There will be so much to use, and the thing with electricity is that the more you have it, the more you want to consume it.
Right. For Nigerians, right, the technology is there, the resources are there, the legislation is there. I'm not sure about the political will, but this is one of those situations where it forces Nigerians to say maybe this problem at this point is spiritual, and, because you struggle to understand why we are where we are. On paper, it looks like everything is good.
Yes. Yeah, I at the risk of interrupting you, and I apologize for that. I remember one of the ministers of power in this country, former Vice Chancellor of University of Nigeria, Professor, what's his name now? He was the one that came up with this theory of demons and spiritual powers influence, and I don't know. It's such a laughable thing.
Indeed.
Because the truth of the matter, and I do agree with you, and we are just a country of ungrateful people. We're a country of bad-minded people. The best of God's creation is man. Everything about God is replicated in man, including the wisdom of God. We may not be as wise, we are not as wise as God, but God has given man ability. Can you imagine man manufacturing an item that can fly in the air and suspend itself in the air, and several other things that God has given man the wisdom to do? What am I trying to say? Can we have 200 million people in this country and we cannot solve our power problem, if it is actually not spiritual, as you said?
All right, let's come back to...
Let's not be too esoteric about it.
Let's come back to reality. All right, so speaking of realities, in all of these things that has been mentioned, from your advice of what needs to be done to what the Minister of Power has called in and even made plans, it's looking like it's going to take a while. You made mention of some saying about 6 months, 3 months. We don't know how close it's going to be. So in short term, in your expert opinion, how realistic, or what are the realistic steps that could be taken in order for Nigerians to at least get a bit of, respite in terms of power?
Now, realistically speaking, I think I don't know how many times we have to do this, but for as many times as we need to do it, if that would be a solution, then we need to do it. First and foremost, we need to be honest with ourselves. Are we really ready to have a power sector?
Who needs to be honest? We the people or the government?
The government is not separate from the people.
At this point,
but you can tell there's a disconnect. Even from the reporting, even from what you're saying, that the will of the people is not being manifested by their leaders, whether it's at the National Assembly or it's at the executive.
I agree, absolutely. So maybe this time around, let's call a spade the government. Because the people are looking up to government for leadership. Once you move out of the people and you get into government, you are no longer a normal person. You are no longer the ordinary person. There's a higher level of responsibility from you. It's just like me as a young man unmarried. The moment I get married, my attitude must mandatorily, and I'm using my word deliberately, my attitude must mandatorily change. If I have been staying outside till about 11 p.m., 12 p.m., for no justifiable reason before, and I have a wife and children or a child at home, responsibility is now on me to make sure that I get back home early enough to take care of them. The same thing with government. The moment you get into government, no excuses again. If you are not intelligent enough to do it, please excuse us. If the kitchen is too hot, get out if you can't bear the heat. So this time around, we push the responsibility to the doorstep of government. Government has to stand up, find out who can do the job, from the minister to the least person. If the minister cannot do the job, sorry, Mr. Minister, can you just step aside? And it follows like that until you are able to aggregate the people who can do the job. 1. 2, what policies do we need to put in place? And what is the timeline? All of these excuses are enough. The excuses are enough. And then when you are finished with setting up the structure and the strategy to be adopted for the implementation, you then, by the time you start implementing, amongst the people, who is disturbing me? Is it the vandals, or those who are not willing to pay for electricity, or those who are owing? Because there is a difference between the person that is owing and the one that is not willing to pay for electricity. The one that is owing, I cut him off. The one that is not willing to pay for electricity, I deal with him according to law. The one that is the vandal, I deal with him according to law. By the time they begin to see all of these actions, and that government is not paying lip service to it, people will sit up. People will sit up, as far as I'm concerned. So government has to start. I mean, the onus is on government to show that I can manage. The onus is on government.
And a final take from you regarding this particular problem, because something tells me we're going to find a way to talk about this in the next couple of weeks or months, and we're going to continue talking about it until we sound like a broken record. But how optimistic are you that these changes, these repositioning, the legislation, the Electricity Act itself, how optimistic are you that the game is changing for the better and Nigerians can expect something good in the future?
A law by itself is not an end. It's only a means to an end. The real game changer is the human beings that are going to operate the law. As bad as the previous law was, it was also possible for us to have used it in a manner that would have taken our power sector beyond the current point where we are now. So if a law is good and the people are bad, the law will not operate. The law will not be able to, we cannot use the law to achieve our purpose, because they will always be looking for the loopholes in the law to be able to counter the law. But if the law is bad and the people are willing and ready to make the best of it, it's a bad workman that blames his tool all the time. It's a bad workman that blames his tool all the time. So if the law is even bad and we are willing and ready to say we want to do it. I mean, when I was in AEDC during the COVID period, one high-rise building around, Kado area, we found it on bypass. And the owners of the place were slammed with about 15 to 20 million. Guess what? They paid quickly. They even threatened that they were going to sue for libel, because one of the electronic stations carried. Until tomorrow morning, they have not seen any court process. They try, we will sue you for libel. You defamed us. You did this. You damaged our reputation. Till tomorrow morning, nothing. Then I was still in AEDC. Why would you want to steal electricity, for crying out loud? Why? Well, yes, we can blame government, but what about the people themselves? And this is not a case of the man staying, with due respect, the man staying in Yanya or the man staying in Pape or the Bola boy that may not be able to afford it. This is a case of those who can afford it. I can tell you clearly that there are those who can afford electricity in this country that also get involved in bypass in this country. It's not that they cannot afford it. Some of them, they are domestic aids. They give money, in fairness to them, they give money to their domestic aids, and their domestic aids connive. So many things are going on in this country that when you hear some of them, you begin to have goose flesh. We really need to change our mind.
Yeah. I mean, if the Ministry of Power can owe electricity bills and the presidency also behind, I mean, that to me just signposts the entire problem in one statement.
Take for instance now, I mean, when that thing was published, we now had the military saying that, the corpses that are in their mortuary are getting messed up and things. Excuse me.
So everyone is now trying to fault someone else, point fingers at, everyone is not doing the right thing in the country at this point. That's what it's all about. Well, I mean, thank you so much, Barrister Oyebade Fadipe, for joining us today to dissect this problem. I hope, let's be optimistic from this side, because from that side, I can feel the pessimism from Abdullahi.
I deliberately avoided that issue of pessimism or optimism because I really don't know where to stand. Frankly, I don't know. I mean, 10 years down the line, you're still telling the same story. We didn't talk about meters, so
yeah,
that's a different story entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think at this point that's even the problem of Nigerians.
No, it's not even
people are no longer interested. Let's just get the power as well.
Yes.
No matter what. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us to discuss the issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.